Hey everyone, welcome. Today I want to talk about orientation because this path inherently is quite destabilizing in our way we orientate towards life. Pre sort of spirituality and waking up, we have the ego to orientate to and who we are, and even though it's uncomfortable underneath, we have this strong sense of who we are as a person, our likes, our dislikes, right? And how we orientate towards life, like, oh, I'm an artist, I'm a carpenter, I'm a this type of person, right? I like to party on the weekends and do this. Like, we have sort of a niche that we fit into. And maybe when we get into spirituality, we start to decide, yeah, I'm a spiritual person and I, go to yoga and eat organic food and all that. But as we keep going deeper, right, as the identity lessens and lessens, this ability to orientate towards life starts to crumble. And some of us, if we've had trauma and stuff, we may not have had a strong identity to begin with, and didn't know how to orientate towards life. And spirituality can make that a little bit worse if we keep trying to orientate. So the ego, for lack of a better word, or the identity, its job is to find a way to orientate to each moment, and it finds patterns that it's comfortable with, and it takes those roads. And this orientation gives life structure and a feeling of, I know what's going on and I know how to live my life. And it's like a combination. We have hope that we keep orientating this way and we'll find fulfillment, or we feel fulfilled that's why when we change our identity or have a new identity, we sort of feel a bit fulfilled for a bit, because we have direction, clarity, purpose, all that. And eventually that crumbles. But as we go deeper down into the layers, this feeling of not knowing how to orientate towards life starts to arise, because we're starting to notice that there's nothing stable. Opinions, views, if we look at them clearly, nothing holds for long. And even peaceful experiences, right? We may try to orientate towards being or presence, but we start to see that, okay, everything is presence, everything is being. I don't need to orientate towards it. That is actually creating a bad habit. And seeing that everything is presence, it's like, okay, how do I move through life now without a ground, without a baseline? And that can be quite uncomfortable and quite hard to even know what we even want in the moment. Like, you find, do I just want to retreat from the world, or do I want to be more involved with the world? Do I want to do something for the world? Like, do I want to world, or do I just want to go and hide away? We don't, because each orientation and identity, it gives us sort of, even though it's not concrete, it gives us some ideals to live by, like, oh, this identity, and I do this on the weekend, and this identity does that. We kind of play the role of whatever. But the path, if taken if we keep digging in, we start to lose that ability to orientate towards anything, because we see that all orientation is kind of false. We see that any way of trying to orientate to feel good or get what we want doesn't actually work. So we're left in this place of non-orientation, and it's like, how do we live life from that point? And it can get confusing, because there's still old habits of the identity wanting structure, but also a pull towards no structure and no filters and no landing pad. And that's can be disorientating. Disorientation would be what arises out of that. And confusing, and being pulled to wanting a structure and trying structures, but at this point they won't work. You can try orientate in an identity way, and it usually just doesn't work, and usually resistance is felt. And it's kind of like you're treading water in emptiness. It's like, where do I even go? But you know, it's kind of just the mind kind of wigging out because it's got no ground to stand on. So how do we resolve this? And the best orientation is the body to start with. We can always orientate towards the sensations in the body and ground in the body, and not the mind. The mind's going to be like, oh, I need to figure out what to do with my life. Need to figure this out. It's like, you know, the body's taking care of your life so far, and it will continue to take care of itself. You know, you will feel called to move when you need to move and do the right thing. And so grounding into the body and noticing that the body has an intelligence to it. It kind of knows what it needs and wants in the moment and how to act. The mind just can spin the body out. But also it's not so much about, so you're grounding in the body, and you'll notice that the body is impermanent and it constantly changes. The sensations are constantly moving and fluctuating. The sensations are ever changing. And this is because how we really have to orientate now when there's no disorientation is orientate towards non-orientation, and each moment is its own sort of thing, and we just have to see that it's like letting go of the wheel essentially, and just trust each moment. Trust the body and then trust each moment. Every moment's going to be change, and every moment requires a different energy. There's not stability. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to hold on to peace constantly. Like, each moment calls for a different expression, a different way to move. And every second is different. And it's finding peace and relaxing of trying to orientate. See, the struggle isn't, we can't, so this is like, this hand is like the energy of orientation, and at first we have the ego, and it's just orientating to something, and it's really uncomfortable because it knows it's unstable, there's nothing underneath it. And through path it's kind of like loosens it up, and then eventually we find we just can't orientate towards anything. The problem is not that we can't find anything to orientate to. The problem is orientating towards something is uncomfortable. The orientation is uncomfortable. So we learn to let go and relax of just allowing things to flow, and eventually that energy will stop. And each moment is brand new. Each moment, you don't realize there's no need to orientate. And it's a selfing energy of trying to create a structure, trying to have something to focus on, whether even when it's presence and beingness. It's why it's good to focus on beingness, but you have to realize eventually that no one's focusing on beingness, right? It can become a fixation on consciousness and beingness, and always abiding in consciousness. And it's like, what's even doing that? Is there anything there, or is it just this kind of grasping energy? But the reason why we don't want to let go of it, because it's uncomfortable when there's nothing to land on. There's no foundation. There's no way to, how do I move towards life? But it's kind of like letting go and trusting, letting go of the wheel, and just noticing that life takes care of itself, that trees grow themselves, the wind blows itself, and the body moves itself. And it's kind of like things are just happening, and it doesn't need commentary or thinking or discussion. And that's where the freedom lies. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next one.